What is up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of our NBA DFS DraftKings Picks videos, this time for Thursday, January 6th, 2022. I'm your host, Justin Bales, joined by Max. He was here last Thursday, right?
Yeah, last Wednesday night.
So. Yeah, well, we record them the night before. It gets very confusing on here trying to not say tonight when you mean for the next day. Whole thing, regardless. Max, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. We had some snow this week, so we've been kind of snowed in for a couple of days here. I'm in Washington, D.C., so yeah, we got like 6 inches or so, but doing well.
Yeah. I just moved down to Raleigh where it almost never snows, and they told us to stay off the road when it does snow. And the other day, like Monday or something, it was like flurrying out. I mean, literally nothing. And I had to drive to my PT appointment. And the road's like 50, and there's people doing like legitimately 10 miles an hour.
Oh God! Well,
you have to be kidding me.
our big highway, like close to my house. Apparently, there were cars like stuck for over 24 hours that couldn't get home on like 2 nights ago. It was all over. It was I was like, oh my gosh. I work from home, so I never really have to leave the house much. But
I mean, that's 10 times better. But we're here for our NBA podcast. Before we get started, if you enjoy this podcast, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. You can turn on notifications by clicking the little bell. That will send you our videos every time they get posted, so you never miss anything. Also, go ahead and drop anything you want in the comments. We will be in throughout the day to answer them. I'm just going to start up by quickly pulling up our projections. These are for last night, Wednesday night, and obviously this is at 10 p.m., so not all of the games have completed yet, but you can kind of get a feel for what is going on with our projections. This is part of our premium package, which is the core plays package. Obviously, you can see that by clicking the little pricing tab up here on top of our projections, which are right here. I'll outline in a second. You also get access to our premium Discord along with our actual core plays and our premium articles. As you can see, the projections, quite a bit of information. You have the normal stuff, player name, positions. You can actually sort this by position as well, along with their teams, their pricing, all that good stuff. You have advanced metrics over here, assist rate. You get the pace boost, the usage, floor and ceiling projections. But the big thing, karma value, which kind of tells you which are the best plays in terms of a point per dollar. You also then have our projected points, which if you're just deciding between players, very, very good way to figure out kind of leverage options and stuff there, along with the ownership projections here. But as you can see last night, again, Kiefer Sykes and Dwayne Washington Jr., as I'm assuming the majority of projections across the industry had them as two of the best plays on the entire slate. As you go down, Christian Wood, who I'm pretty sure had a very big game last night against Washington. But that's kind of what you're getting here. Very easy way to quickly make lineups to kind of figure out everything that you want to do to get leverage plays, such as someone like Jusuf Nurkic, who obviously wasn't going to get a lot of ownership on this type of a slate. We don't necessarily know how he's done at this point because it's 10 p.m. the night before, but projections a very good way to kind of sort your way through the slate along with everything else that we offer. Moving on to tonight's, though, we can quickly, I guess, go over the injury news. Only 4 games. This should be very fast. There's not really all that much. For Boston, Peyton Pritchard is out. On the other side, Kemba Walker continues to be out. I believe he's expected to return shortly, but he has already been ruled out for tomorrow. Nerlens Noel questionable. For Detroit, Isaiah Livers, Corey Joseph, and Isaiah Stewart all questionable. Frank Jackson continues to miss time. For Memphis, DeAnthony Melton and Dylan Brooks are both questionable. Desmond Bane, Kyle Anderson, Yves Pons, all doubtful. And then John Contra and Xavier Tillman both ruled out already. Klay Thompson's expected to return Sunday for Golden State. Andre Iguodala questionable. Otto Porter already listed as probable. Opposite side, nothing much of note. Thomas Satoransky is still out. For the Clippers, Isaiah Hartenstein, Luke Kennard, Ivica Zubac all ruled out already. Brandon Boston Jr. and Nicholas Batum both questionable. And then for Phoenix, Landry Shamet, Jay Crowder, Abdel Nader, DeAndre Ayton, and JaVale McGee all out as well there. That's it. That was the quickest injury news that we have done in probably the last month and a half. So feel really good about this slate. Now, let's get on to the position by position. And since I've been talking for literally the first 5 minutes of this podcast, Max, start us off at point guard with who you're looking at.
Yeah. Point guard tonight, I think you want to spend up at point guard. So I have a few options highlighted, but Ja Morant just at the top. I think he's probably the best spend up on the slate in my eyes. There's a few injuries on Memphis, so they're going to be shorthanded. I think Bane actually got ruled out just a few minutes ago. So he's out. In addition, Dylan Brooks, I think, is questionable. So yeah, there's just, I mean, Ja Morant he leads the team anyway, but there's just a lot of usage, especially when Burks is out. He seems to really, his rates go up quite a bit. So yeah, Ja Morant at 9,200 on DK. I like that as a spend up option. I also, Chris Paul, he's priced at 7,300. That's just too cheap, I think, for Chris Paul. He's about 1.2 fantasy points per minute with Ayton off the floor. Now, I think Ayton's questionable, but yeah, Paul, he should get 34, 35 minutes. I mean, he just at 7,300, he's just too cheap. So I like Paul and Morant as spend up options. If you want to pay down, I think Tyus Jones could potentially open up with just if Brooks and Bane are out, you might see Tyus Jones minutes go up, and he's priced pretty cheaply at 4,100. He's a decent fantasy point per minute guy, 0.8, 0.9-ish, but if he runs into 25, 30 minutes, he'd be a pretty good value option. Other than that, at point guard, there's just some kind of GPP darts. Reggie Jackson at 6,100, I don't mind. That's a pretty good price tag for him with Paul George out. I know the Clippers are supposed to get a couple guys back. I think Kennard's most likely coming back and possibly Batum. But yeah, Reggie Jackson at 6,100. He has a lot of upside at that price tag, and that's a decent amount cheaper. I think he's been in the 7Ks the last week or two. So 6,100, I like that a lot.
Yeah, Reggie Jackson was up at 8-1 like 2 games ago or something.
Was he? Wow.
Yeah, it's a big drop off.
Yeah, I wonder I guess he hasn't really been playing that well, but I mean, he's really just a scorer. So he can, if he's hitting his threes, he can put up numbers quick. So he's more of a GPP option in my eyes. So yeah, those are the main options for me.
Yeah, I think you outlined it very well. Chris Paul is kind of the guy that sticks out. That's such a low price tag essentially. But to be fair, I feel like they underpriced a lot of guys tonight. Like Ja Morant was just up around 10,000. He's now down to the low 9s. Obviously, Reggie Jackson from 2 games ago has lost 2,000 off his price tag. So a lot of guys are just essentially mispriced, and that's kind of the best way to put it. I pretty much agree that you probably want to spend up. There's no one at point guard that I'm necessarily just locking into my lineups that's super cheap. I do think there are some options. Tyus Jones, definitely one of them. I think that you can go with someone like Cameron Payne. Justice Winslow's point guard eligible, and he's getting 20 to 25 minutes, and he's performed well on a per minute basis. And then I don't necessarily know how much I trust it, but Justin Robinson is 3,000, and he's getting between 20 and 25 minutes essentially for Detroit. I know that they are getting a bunch of people back. The problem is they have a few guys questionable at guard. If those guys are still out again, I think Robinson probably plays the 20, 25 minutes. If those guys are back, Robinson probably loses his role. So it's something that you do need to keep an eye on. But for 3,000, you could do worse than a guy that could drop, 20 to 25 fantasy points there.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, overall, this feels like in cash games, you're just kind of locking in Chris Paul to me. And if you want to use another guard, I probably would just assume that it's Ja Morant, because Detroit at the moment doesn't really have the rim protection. I know Isaiah Stewart could come back, but it's not like he's an overly massive center or anything that's going to really stop Morant from getting to the rim. And if he's out, they're really relying on someone like Trey Lyles to protect the rim against Ja Morant, who could be the most electrifying dunker in the NBA at this point. So I do think that he's a really good option there.
Yeah. Just in general on the slate, the spend up options, I don't really like the really high end, like over 10K. So it's leaning more towards a little bit of a balanced build, just because like the Steph Currys and Jason Tatums, I'm not getting there. So you're going to end up having some money. So we'll see how much savings we need under 4K for value.
No, I agree with that. Not necessarily the stars and scrubs type of build that we've been doing basically every night over the last few nights, but that kind of goes with the territory a lot of the times with the 4-game slates, because it limits the amount of guys that you really have. That, an 11-game slate, you're going to find guys that are under 4,000 that are really good options.
Right.
4 games, significantly less, but we can move to shooting guard. Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, shooting guard. Not a great position when I look at the options. You have Devin Booker up top at 8,700. I don't mind that, but he's just generally more of a GPP option. But I do like him for GPPs. I'm not sure if I'd get there in cash. And then some other spend up options. You have Brandon Ingram at 8,100. That's a pretty good price tag on him. As you were saying, these prices they seem to have cut them by like almost $1,000, the high end. So he was typically around 9K and now he's at 8,100. And I don't mind that. He does have a pretty tough matchup with Golden State, but yeah, 8,100. If they can keep that close, don't mind that tag. Probably my favorite play is Alec Burks from New York. He started last game, kind of surprisingly, but with Kemba out, he's starting again, and he played, I think, 36 minutes last game. So he's back in that role where he plays tons of minutes, 35 to 40 minutes. He does have a somewhat tough matchup with Boston, but 5,900 is a pretty good tag if you can get 35 minutes out of Alec Burks. He's around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. So I like that. I might be leaning there in cash games. If you did want to spend down, Campaign at 4,400. When he's on the court, he puts up fantasy points. The big question with him is how many minutes he's going to get. But yeah, I like him. He typically gets 20 to 24 minutes, but sometimes that goes up. And so he can get there either with a bump in minutes or just being really efficient because he's such a good fantasy producer. So I don't mind paying at 4,400. And that's really about it. Mikael Bridges at 4,900. So last game he played like 40 minutes, and he's a terrible fantasy producer. I mean, he might be like one of the worst in the league. But I think with Shamit was out last game. I don't know if he's been ruled out this game or not, but with Shamit out, it seems to affect Bridges' minutes. So if he's getting 40 minutes again, which he might, he doesn't rate out as a bad play at 4,900. But it's really just a minutes play. So I don't mind that either.
Yeah, Shamet's been ruled out, so should be good on that end. Weird that we're like, oh yeah, the guy could just casually play 42 minutes in a night in the NBA. Like it's nothing. Like that should be a normal thing that players actually do. But it's kind of funny because you look at the prices of a bunch of these guys and you're like, yep, that guy's way too cheap. But you just keep looking at the prices of them and they're all just way too cheap. Cade Cunningham recently returned from the COVID protocols, 9,000. He's 7,900 today. I believe Jalen Brown a few games ago was actually at 10,000. He just posted like 75 fantasy points in a game the other night. He's now down to 9,000. Devin Booker's down to 8,700. I mean, very clear. I guess Booker actually didn't get priced down that much. I think he was
he didn't
before, but very clear that they're just kind of underpricing guys. I do think that you outlined this really well. I don't necessarily think that there's anyone too much that I want to add. I think if you want, someone with upside, Jordan Poole does obviously have the scoring upside. And basically, if you're a Jordan Poole fan, this is kind of your last hurrah because Klay Thompson comes back on Sunday, and it's really going to cut into Jordan Poole's kind of production. So I don't know. I guess the only guy that I would add is, depending on who returns and who doesn't for the Clippers, if the guys like Nicholas Batum are still out, Amir Coffey's getting plenty of time, and he's actually produced relatively well, still only 4,300. So you can take a shot there. I think he's completely
I like
fine.
that.
You're good with Coffey?
I don't mind that. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, just another deep GPP play, but he's priced down as well, 3,900.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like him. Go ahead.
Well, he's just a guy. I mean, if he chucks it. So if he's hitting his shot and he plays 25 minutes, he can crush at that price tag.
Yeah, he's so good on a per minute basis, and just obviously hasn't had consistent minutes. And I was actually playing him a lot when he was like 4,100 with Brandon Ingram out, because his minutes were slightly more consistent. Even then, even with Ingram out, they were pretty inconsistent because you assumed he was going to get high 20s, low 30s, and they were kind of all over the place. But with Ingram back now, they might just play him like less than 20 minutes and pull him in kind of overnight. So
so I think Josh Hart is questionable, or maybe he's out. He might be questionable, Hart. But yeah. If he's ruled out, that could impact Alexander Walker's minutes. I mean, I could see him getting a couple more minutes if that's the case. I know Hart plays small forward, but I have him marked as questionable, but I could be off on that.
I think he's back. I believe he's back. He played the 4th, and he played almost 40 minutes. So, unless he got hurt, I don't think he got hurt late in that game, right? Or
I don't think so. I just went through the DK app, and I saw a Q by his name, I think.
Oh, DraftKings.
Yeah, so it could definitely be erroneous.
Speaking of small forward, though, we can move on to that position. For me personally, I feel like Tatum and Brown are like fine if you want to use them in GPPs, but they're a little expensive. A guy that I do like, and he essentially got the night off last night after just playing these massive minutes, is Saddiq Bey. He played a lot of the first half, and then they just got absolutely blown out. So he only played a few minutes of the second half, ended with 26 minutes, I think. And he's really been posting like 50 plus fantasy points. And I know that obviously Detroit's much healthier at this point. It's not just Bey completely taking over, but as long as Jeremy Grant's out, Bey has a really, really big role in the offense. So I do think that he's one of the better options for the price tags. Who else here are you looking at?
Yeah, Bey seems like a pretty good option. I would more have him as a GPP option just because of his price tag. But yeah, he has 50-point fantasy point upside. There's a couple plays that were shooting guard and small forward eligible in Ingram and Burks. Sorry, my screen cut out on me. Hold on one sec. Ingram and Burks. And then, so probably my favorite play, though, is Marcus Morris at 5,600, I believe, on DK. So yeah, 5,600 price tag. I like that. He's been taking over the offense since he's come back from injury, especially with Paul George out. So yeah, he has a tough matchup with Phoenix, but at 5,600, I like it as long as they can keep that game competitive. I know the Clippers are getting some bodies back, but I still think Morris is pretty much locked in to 32 to 35 minutes a night. So I think that's just some good savings. And you have Mikael Bridges also at small forward. So a lot of players with a dual eligibility at shooting guard and small forward that you can play here. But yeah, for cash games, I think I'd go Marcus Morris. What do you think?
I like that. Marcus Morris really just taking on a massive offensive role for them. It's actually, he kind of just like stepped into, not completely, but basically into Paul George's role, where there are nights where he's taken like 20 plus shot attempts, which, I mean, I don't know if that's the best thing for your team necessarily, but in terms of Marcus Morris's fantasy appeal, it is the best thing for him, right?
Right. Yeah, he's a chucker. I've always kind of liked playing Marcus Morris. I don't know why. It might be like a bias there, but he just always, whenever I watch games, he just always seems to be high usage and taking a lot of shots. So, and he plays a lot of minutes. So, so yeah, I've always been on him. One other play I didn't mention, Cam Johnson at 5,300. He is kind of getting priced up a bit, but I think JaVale McGee's still out. So Cam Johnson should continue to, and I'm not sure if Crowder's coming back or not. He might be questionable. But if Crowder is out, Cam Johnson should continue to start, should play big minutes. I mean, 5,300 is a fair price tag, but I don't mind that. Seems pretty safe.
Yeah, I believe Crowder's out for at least one more game, so he should be there. I guess there's two players that I probably add here. One, Josh Hart. He's just playing well. He's a super consistent, super versatile option for the New Orleans Pelicans. Gets a reasonable matchup against Golden State. I'm not like, I don't know. I don't love the matchup, but I'm not overly scared of it just because he's only 6,400. And if you kind of look at what he's done, 36 minutes in each of his last 7 games. He's played over 40 minutes in, I believe, 2 of those. Consistently sits around like 38 minutes per game. So 4-game slate, you can do worse than just grabbing guys that are going to play like 40 minutes on this slate. So I think he's good. Right below him, I think that assuming he's completely healthy, which hard assumption at this point, Dillon Brooks, he's just taking on a very, very big offensive role for Memphis. He gets a really good matchup against Detroit, who we just saw get absolutely destroyed by the Charlotte Hornets last night. So I think that assuming it's announced he doesn't have a minutes restriction, you can go with Dillon Brooks on the slate. And then if you need to spend down a little bit, Terrence Mann is still playing very solid minutes. Again, this kind of sits on the Clippers news. If Nicholas Batum comes back and is going to play his normal minutes, Mann probably drops down a little bit from where he's at, and that adds a bit of risk. But if Mann gets his normal minutes, he's been playing 30 plus. I think he's a really good option for under 5,000.
Yeah, I like that play a lot. He fills up the stat sheet, contributes in all the categories. So yeah, I like Mann.
I think that does it for small forward. We can move to power forward. First big question, I think, and I think I know your answer to this, but I do want to ask anyway. Is his last game, and that is Julius Randle, where he dropped 50 plus, was that a fluke, or is he actually going to start playing like people are anticipating coming into the season?
Yeah, I was looking at that because last year I wouldn't have minded Randle at 10K, but this year just his rates have just not been there. And it's a pretty tough matchup with Boston. So I don't think I can get there. I think he shot, I don't have the game log in front of me, but I think he had a good shooting night also. Mm-hmm. So that contributed to him getting there. But yeah, 10,000, I don't think I can get there in cash games. If you want to take a shot in GPPs, I mean, I don't mind it because he's got the upside where he could put up the highest fantasy points on the slate. But yeah, I'm probably not going to get there on Randle. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think this is honestly for me a position where you likely been down, and I don't mean you necessarily have to go all the way to the bottom of the position, but I mean, you have guys that we talked about at small forward. I'm not going to re-go over those. If you forget, just scroll back a little bit on the little time thing and you can replay what's happening. But at 6,100, Jaren Jackson Jr. just comes with tremendous upside. Also extremely risky because he fouls a ton. But it's not like Detroit really has anyone that's going to force him into really bad situations. If you drop down more, So Jalen Smith, I bet, is over on his points in his last game. Scored 10 in the first quarter, ended with 12. All he needed was 15. Another guy that can struggle with fouls, but also comes with a ton of upside. And the matchup against the Clippers, they don't necessarily have a big like Jonas Valanciunas that's going to go draw fouls on you. So I do think that Jalen Smith at 5,200 is a really good option. And then just one more that's finally getting back his minutes. Brennan Clark, 23 plus minutes in each of his last three. He dropped 30 plus fantasy points in two of those, 27 plus in all three of them. He's still only 4,400. Brennan Clark's one of the better salary relief options on this slate, in my opinion. What do you think about those three? And is there anyone else really here that you're looking at?
Yeah, Jalen Smith, I was all over him yesterday. I thought he was going to try. I thought he would get big minutes, and we really don't know. He was in foul trouble that whole game. So I wonder how it would have gone. But I know, like, to start the game, he was dominating. He had like 15 fantasy points in like the first 5 or 6 minutes, and then he got in foul trouble. So I'll probably go right back there. Phoenix playing Clippers. Yeah, the Clippers aren't going to get him. Hopefully, I don't know. He's handsy, so hopefully they don't get him in foul trouble. But if he can stay out of foul trouble, he's probably my favorite play at power forward. I'll go back to him again. Trey Lyles, I don't think you mentioned him. He's in play. He's starting to get priced up at 5,000, but he played. I don't know what his numbers were tonight, how many minutes he played, but I know the night before he was at like 35 minutes. So he's getting big minutes and he's starting at center for Detroit. So at 5K, he's around a 0.9, close to a fantasy point per minute guy. So I like that at 5,000. You mentioned Clark, fine with that. Ibaka's another play. I don't think you mentioned, but that's going to be contingent on Zubac. So if Zubac's back, I think he's listed as questionable. But if Ibaka draws the start, I don't mind that. He hasn't been getting quite as many minutes as I was expecting in the last few games. He's been around 22 to 24 minutes or so. He just hasn't been closing games, but he can produce in a number of ways, so I don't mind Ibaka.
Yeah, I agree with that. Trey Lyles scored like 27 fantasy points. I'm not sure on his minutes last night, but around 27 fantasy points. I think I'll definitely have him in my pool if Stewart's out. If Stewart's back, I probably move Lyles out just because I don't necessarily know if he's really going to play all that much.
Yeah.
The only other guy that I think we should probably add to this pool would be Herbert Jones at 4,500. Tough matchup against Golden State, but if you just kind of look at what Jones has been doing, 28 plus fantasy points in each of his last 5, played 30 plus minutes in all those games. I think he played 34 plus minutes in 4 of those 5. Versatile option, can add blocks, can add steals. I think he actually just broke New Orleans' record for most straight games with a block. It's at like 15 or something right now. So a lot of peripherals that you can get, along with the other night, he actually did score 26 real life points. So plenty of upside there. And he's still only 4,500, I believe. Yeah, 4,500.
Yep.
Bad matchup. Good player, right?
Yeah. And one thing, I was just looking at some of these matchups, but there's a lot of back-to-backs tomorrow. And Golden State has some potential Russ candidates. So we'll see. But I could see some crazy things happening with all these back-to-backs going into tomorrow's slate. So we'll have to monitor news as always.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important thing to note. because guys rest or guys, they don't play their normal allotted minutes. They kind of get a little bit of a break here and there.
Yeah. I was looking at the Warriors, and I'm just in my head, they're getting a matchup against New Orleans. Mm-hmm. I could see them sitting Draymond or Steph potentially, but
no,
we'll see. That's just a hunch.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. Just the type of way that they run their roster. Center, not including the dual position eligibility guys. Center's pretty brutal. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I'm looking through.
It's not good, right?
Yeah, do we know if DeAndre Ayton's definitely rolled out?
Yeah, Ayton and JaVale McGee are both out.
Both out?
Oh, okay. Combo yet.
Well, Valanciunas is an option if you want to spend up. He's 8,800. He is playing against Golden State, so it's a tough matchup. But for GPPs, he has like tons of upside. So I never mind getting to Valanciunas in GPPs. I probably wouldn't pay that tag against Golden State in cash games. Other than him, so Robert Williams is interesting. He has been terrible with Al Horford, and I'm going to be curious to look up how he did tonight. But before last night, he had been actually the last couple of weeks, he's been doing okay with Horford. So his rates are starting to change where he's been over a fantasy point per minute, even playing with Horford the last couple of weeks. So, and he's put up some big games in the last 4 or 5. So for GPPs, he's an option. He is priced up, but Robert Williams has tons of upside if he's going to get 33 to 35 minutes. So I don't mind that play. Steven Adams at 5,400. I'm not crazy about the play, but he's been playing more minutes of late, and he's close to a fantasy point per minute guy. Should get the minutes kind of fluctuate. They can be anywhere from 26 to 32. So that is somewhat hard to predict. Matchup with Detroit, I don't mind it at 5,400. And other than that, there's not much. Biombo, Ayton's out. So Biombo had a monster game the last game he played. It was mainly because Jalen Smith was in foul trouble. But who knows? I mean, Jalen Smith could get in foul trouble again. Biombo's at 4K. I mean, it's more of a deep GPP play, but I wouldn't mind it if Jalen Smith is getting chalky as a pivot to Biombo.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. Really, the one guy that I wanted to say was Steven Adams. So I think he's super risky because it's not like Detroit is overly big, and Memphis could look to go small and small with them, with someone like Clark, who obviously is much smaller than Steven Adams. But I don't know. They could also just look to get the size in the post and try to beat them with the size. Wouldn't be overly shocked either way. So I do think that Adams is a good option at 5,400. I also think that he comes with quite a bit of risk. The only other play that I would add is right below Biombo. Kevon Looney is 3,900, getting solid minutes, especially if Draymond Green happens to rest in this game. Makes a pretty solid option if you're looking to save money. But realistically for me, most likely I'm using one of the power forward guys at center tonight, because usually small forward is the worst position on any given slate. Tonight, I think it actually might be center.
Yeah, it's crazy that center usually has like 10 plays I want to play every night. So it's kind of crazy. There's not much. And just looking at the slate in general, there's like not much I really like to spend up on. Like Chris Paul and Ja Morant, they just stand out in general. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it just seems like the other spend ups I'm just not crazy about. So almost all the other positions you're kind of looking at some mid range or spending down.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. that's all that we got for you for this podcast. Again, if you enjoyed it, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel. You can also drop any comments below. We will be in throughout the day to answer them. Thank you for watching. I will be back with a Friday podcast for tomorrow. But until then, good luck tonight.